Welcome to the Wicket.
Hello, and it's another visit to the Wicket, your weekly podcast from Arab News looking at the world of cricket locally in the Gulf, regionally across Asia and worldwide. I'm Brian Murgatroyd, and with me to discuss and analyse events across the sport are Arab News columnist Jon Pike and Arab News cricket reporter Subas Humagain. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello, Brian.
Hello, John. Hello, Brian.
And in this episode, we speak about the fourth test between India and England in Ranchi, which saw India seal the series with a match to spare. There's the ICC Cricket World Cup Challenge League playoff in Malaysia, where 8 teams are battling for 4 spots to retain a chance of qualifying for the Cricket World Cup in Southern Africa in 2027. There's the ongoing Women's Cricket League in India, which began just after our previous episode and which has already produced some compelling cricket. We wrap up the ICC World League 2 tournament in Nepal, involving the hosts Namibia and the Netherlands. We discuss some controversy in the final match of Afghanistan's tour of Sri Lanka. We catch up on the Australia men's tour of New Zealand. We sift through the latest happenings at the Pakistan Super League and the Bangladesh Premier League. And Jon and Subas give us their highlights of the past week in cricket. So, as ever, lots to cover. Let's get started. We begin with India's 5-wicket win over England in the 4th test in Ranchi with a day to spare, a result that gives them an unbeatable 3-1 lead in the series with one match in Dharmashala still to play. It was a gutsy battling win for India, as there were several occasions when England seemed set to take charge of the match. They scored 353 thanks in large measure to Joe Root's 31st Test 100, a return to form for him after meagre returns in the first 3 matches, and then they reduced India to 177 for 7 in reply before Dhruv Jurel's 90 helped reduce the first innings deficit for India to 46. England then reached 110 for 3 in their second innings before losing their last 7 wickets for just 35 to set India 192 for victory. The home side slipped from 84 without loss to 120 for 5 in the final innings, only for Shubman Gill and Jurel again to shepherd them to victory in impressive fashion. For England, Shoaib Bashir took 8 wickets in the match, but it was impossible to escape the impression that this, for England, was a serious missed opportunity. Jon, is that the way you saw it? And if so, where did it all go so wrong for Ben Stokes' side?
Yes, they got in front on more than one occasion, but failed to capitalise. I think in the cold light of day, they're not technically or weren't technically good enough on a consistent enough basis compared with India and the players that India were able to bring in as replacements. Looking for positives, Bashir is a serious talent, however, and I think that commends well on Stokes and the selectors for identifying him. So that's good for the future.
Yes, 8 wickets for Shoaib Bashir, including 5 in the first innings. Subas, on the other side of the coin, you've sung the praises of Dhruv Jurel on this podcast in the past, and you must have been mightily impressed by the way he won the match for India with the bat, with 2 fantastic innings under pressure. He was player of the match, and deservedly so.
Well, he had the numbers in very little first-class cricket, but even I am surprised to see him contribute this way with the bat. India were struggling with a good keeper, and I think now they have someone they can rely on the lower middle order as well. Jurel was exceptional playing out the overs in midway of first innings, and when he needed to accelerate, I think he opened fire, got near the century, deserved one, missed out, but I think second innings was even more impressive with the pressure of result hanging over, but he never seemed to be under it. I think he came in to face the hat-trick ball, but stayed till the end with Gill. I think it's a great statement from him.
Jon, India's tail wagged, and that cost England dear in the final analysis. Was there anything else Ben Stokes could have done to prevent that, do you think?
I'm not sure. I think that they obviously batted very well in that lower order, with Jurel leading that particular phase. I think all credit has to go to them. For me, the damage is actually done in the third innings. And that collapse you've already referred to down to 145. And I think that shows a lack of technical expertise and perhaps a lack of real experience in being able to turn the screw when it really matters.
Yes, that was a disastrous collapse for England, no question about that. Subas, there's been so much praise for Ben Stokes' captaincy. So a word too, perhaps, on Rohit Sharma, who's marshalled his team so very well in this series, hasn't he?
Rohit has found answers when in doubt. Jurel and Sarfaraz have copped up well after getting their break in the third test only. Jadeja has proved decision to elevate him in batting order right, and even without Kohli, Jaiswal has been in top form. So I think Rohit is getting much helping hands from his teammates like Stokes has not been.
Yes, that would certainly appear to be the case. Rohit's had a lot of help from particularly the younger players, and he's performed so well in the last couple of tests himself too, leading from the front. John, with the series gone, do England give the likes of Gus Atkinson and Dan Lawrence a chance in the final match of the series? Or is that simply not the style of Ben Stokes and Brendan McCullum, who do, as we've seen, like to persevere with players?
Well, one would hope so. Atkinson doesn't bowl a ball. Lawrence hasn't had a chance. I personally think Bairstow needs a rest. I think he's technically flawed under Indian conditions. He does look like a rabbit under headlights when facing spin bowling. And of course, Atkinson could have been making some money in the Pakistan Super League. So I think on compassionate grounds, he deserves a go in what is now a sort of dead series.
Well, that would be fascinating if Johnny Bairstow was given a rest, of course, because he's on 99 test appearances at the moment, and the game in Dharmashala would be his 100th. So we'll see what the selectors come up with there. But Subas, it really is exciting for India, isn't it, to win a series of this magnitude with such an inexperienced batting lineup. There was no Virat Kohli. KL Rahul only played a very minor role. No Rishabh Pant as well. Goodness me, it bodes very well for their test future, doesn't it?
Yeah, Jurel and Sarfaraz, I think they have been impressive. They had to wait until third test, but if you compare them with Patidar and Bharat, I think the performance speak clear, and these youngsters have grabbed the opportunity with both hands. Now with Rahul, Kohli, and Pant nearing comeback, I think the Indian team will be happy. Their bench strength is strong, and if needed, I think they can come and play in the front foot.
Well, the final test of the series gets underway in Dharmashala on the 7th of March, and we'll chat about it and wrap up the series as a whole once that match finishes. Let's talk now about the ICC Cricket World Cup Challenge League playoff. It's taking place in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, and there's been some competitive and controversial cricket as 8 sides try to keep alive their hopes of qualifying for the next ICC Men's Cricket World Cup. Those 8 teams are Bahrain, Bermuda, Italy, Kuwait, Malaysia, Saudi Arabia, Tanzania and Vanuatu, and they'll be whittled down to 4 by the end of the tournament after playing in 2 groups of 4, and then the top 3 in each of those groups going into a Super 6 stage. The controversy came right at the end of the group stage as Malaysia bowled a wide to prevent Vanuatu hitting a 6 to win the match and so overtake them on net run rate. Malaysia then needed Bahrain to beat Tanzania, and that would have meant that Malaysia, Tanzania and Vanuatu would all have been tied on the same points tally, and if that had happened, the net run rate would have come into play, with Malaysia moving into the Super 6 stage ahead of Vanuatu. Well, as it was, Tanzania won, and so Bahrain, Tanzania and Vanuatu moved forward from that group, Group B, while Kuwait, Italy and Bermuda went through from Group A, with Saudi Arabia missing out. Subas, first of all, Malaysia caught in controversy with their actions. What do you make of it? It's hardly the spirit of cricket, is it?
Well, I'd not align this one with the spirit of cricket. I think they knew the calculations and wanted to keep themselves in touching distance if the other results went their way. Good thing is they were well aware of the numbers, and not just Malaysia. I think Vanuatu were keeping track of the run rate as well, and this shows how fine margins are in associated cricket. Personally, I feel sad for Malaysia. I think we expected them to reinvigorate themselves under Virandip's captaincy, but things have not gone their way, and it's a sad story for them.
Yes, it is a sad story for them. But John, not only Malaysia, but also Saudi Arabia missed out, even though they finished on the same points as Bermuda. as the tiebreaker was the match between those two sides, which Bermuda won ahead of net run rate. Are you happy with that, or do you think net run rate should have been the decider?
Well, I'm not a fan of net run rate. Even more so, I'm not a fan of penalties resolving football matches. Net run rate's arcane and it's complex and it has blemishes. Now, it's not linked with a team winning a match or wickets lost, for example. You might ask, what's the alternative? Head-to-head, but when the sides don't play each other, as in the case of this tournament, it's an issue. So it's an unresolved problem. But I am pleased that Malaysia did not progress. I don't think that deliberate bowling or wide in those situations is in the spirit of cricket at all. And I wonder whether umpires ought to be allowed some discretion to overrule such deliveries.
Well, that would be an interesting thing if that were to take place. And as you say, you could argue that Malaysia got their comeuppance there. They were certainly playing by the rules, but perhaps not by the spirit of cricket, as you pointed out there. Subas, no side remained unbeaten in the group stages of the tournament. On that basis, is it possible to pick a likely winner, or is it simply too close to call?
I think the group is still open. Kuwait are one of the favorites in my eyes, but there will be close finish for that second spot and beyond. Still surprised how Malaysia and Saudi failed despite having good start. They had great opportunity to get through, but I think it's mixed results, and anyone can beat anyone apart from Kuwait.
Well, that's associate cricket for you, isn't it? The fact that it is so cutthroat. We've seen that so many times in so many different competitions over the years. Jon, what have you made of Saudi Arabia's struggles here? It will no doubt frustrate them after their recent success in the 2020 format in the first stage of qualification for the next T20 Asia Cup. But do they have to be realistic and acknowledge that this setback, painful though it might be, is all part of a learning process for their players as they develop?
Yes, I think they do, and they will. Let's remember they weren't very far off. 4 runs defeat to Bermuda. There's all the difference here. So I think we can regard them as improving pretty well all the time now. The more exposure they get to these sort of matches and these sort of competitions.
Yes, 4 runs between the two sides, and that ultimately cost Saudi Arabia a place in the Super Six. And it's another illustration of the fact that associate cricket can be so cutthroat. Well, we'll keep across the Challenger playoff for you as it reaches its conclusion and bring you a wrap-up on our next episode. And if you'd like to know more about cricket in Saudi Arabia, then there's plenty for you to read on the subject at the Arab News website. That's www.arabnews.com/cricket. The first tri-series of the World Cup League 2 has wrapped up in Nepal, with Namibia coming out on top with 3 wins from its 4 matches against the Netherlands and the hosts. The Dutch finished with a flourish with an 8-wicket win over Nepal in the final match, and for Nepal, it was a story of disappointment. Just 1 win for them from their 4 games, and that came in their first meeting with the Netherlands. Just like those teams in Malaysia, these teams are also trying to stay on the road to the next Cricket World Cup in 2027. There are 8 sides in World League 2, the 3 who played in Nepal, plus Canada, Oman, Scotland, the UAE and the USA. Each side will play 3 series at home and 6 away for a total of 36 one-day internationals, with the top 4 sides going straight into the next Cricket World Cup qualifier, while the bottom 4 will take part in a playoff alongside the top 4 sides in the World Cup Challenger League that we've already spoken about to reach that World Cup qualifier. Subas, you were at the tournament in Nepal. 5 of the 6 matches were won by the side batting second. Was the toss really too crucial in what happened?
Well, the 9:30 start meant it was hard for batters until the sun was fully out, but even the top order batters failed to start well in the first round. The case was different in the second round, and all the captains agreed that the condition was not major cause, but the approach on opening the batting was. Only Namibia defended the score, losing the toss, but it could have been Nepal in either of 2 matches against Namibia as well.
Well, Jon, after missing out on the last Cricket World Cup qualifier, it's a great statement by Namibia, this, isn't it? Getting underway in the way they have.
Yes, it's a fabulous response. And, of course, in the latest match, we've had fastest T20 100 by the delightfully named Jan Nicol Lofty-Eaton. which I think we'll probably hear of more from Subas in a while.
Yes, we'll chat about that towards the end of the podcast. Subas, Nepal went into the series with a long unbeaten run of one-day internationals at home, and yet they finished up with 3 losses in 4 matches. How much of a shock was that for the home fans, or should they have been expecting it, given there has been some rebuilding taking place within the squad?
Well, the away team ended last cycle and played excellent cricket with understrength squad against Canada. The fans expected much from the team, but I think experimentation within the squad during the league to hurt the result. I think there's no need of rebuild, but the performance from some individuals in that Canada series forced the team to alter their original setup, and that cost the team dear. I think the headache in selection and inconsistent middle order batting was the reason. I expect even the result. I think we lost only 2 matches throughout the cycle, and this time we have already lost 3. So I think that's a big blow.
Yes, Nepal will certainly need to put their house in order there if they're to retain their chance of a top 4 finish. John, the Dutch, as always, seems to be the case. They didn't have their full strength side on duty, but many of the players there had experience in the now defunct World Cup Super League against full members. How do you assess their efforts in Nepal? Played 4, won 2, lost 2.
Well, obviously, very patchy. I think part of the clue, as Subas has mentioned, is it's been dependent upon the toss. You think they lost to Nepal and then a week later won by 8 wickets. They beat Namibia and then a few days later lost to Namibia. So there's not a very clear pattern at all associated with that.
No, well, the focus switches to the UAE in the World League 2 now, where Canada, Scotland and the UAE start their own campaigns as we record this podcast. We'll speak of that action in our next episode, and we'll also chat as well in detail about the tri-series that's now taking place in Nepal, involving Nepal, Namibia and the Dutch. That's a T20 tri-series as the teams get ready for the T20 World Cup, of course. Afghanistan's tour of Sri Lanka wrapped up in controversial fashion with a win for the touring side by 3 runs in the final 2020 international in Dambulla. Afghanistan posted an imposing 209 for 5, with Ramanullah Gurbas scoring 70 from 43 balls, but Sri Lanka almost chased it down and perhaps would have done but for an incident in the final over of that chase. With 11 needed from the final 3 balls, Wafadar Momand bowled a delivery to Kamandu Mendis that appeared to be above waist height, but it wasn't called as a no ball by umpire Lyndon Hannibal. Sri Lanka's captain, Wanindu Hasaranga, was so incensed that he called out the incident afterwards and said the umpire should look for another career, something that earned him a trip to the match referee and ultimately a 2-match ban through an accumulation of ICC Code of Conduct penalty points. It means he'll miss the first 2 2020 internationals against Bangladesh, scheduled for March. A remarkable incident that at the back end of that tour. John, what do you make of what happened? Is there any scope to have some sympathy for Hasaranga, given players are often expected to speak when in an emotional state straight after a close match?
Well, I've got huge sympathy for him. I know there are contractual issues, having to appear in front of a microphone, but having one thrust down your throat when you've lost in controversial circumstances is very difficult to cope with. For what does seem to have been an umpire error.
Yes, it does seem to have been an umpire error, but unfortunately, Hasaranga and everyone else knows how things stand in that regard, of course. The umpire is always right, even if he's wrong. Subas, just as was the case at the end of their tour of India in January, Afghanistan have won the final match of a tour. Why do you think it's once again taken them so long to show their true colours?
I think not being able to carry on the momentum, like we discussed earlier, and they've come close, but could not get over the finish line. And even in this final win, I think the game was not far from a drama, but I think Trott's work with the team is still in progress. They have talents, especially for T20s, real stars in Azmat, Rashid and Gurbaz. I think will be playing in IPL ahead of the World Cup, and that will mean more.
And Subhash, how optimistic are you for Sri Lanka for the T20 World Cup to come on the basis of this series?
Well, one Indu has made a great comeback from injury, and so has Matthews after all the drama in between. But how they will manage the workload is yet to be seen. They have main players playing in the IPL who will join the team ahead of the World Cup. But how much playing time will these players get will be very important, because you'd want these players to not overburn as well as get some game time ahead of their main tournament.
And John, there's still no Rashid Khan for Afghanistan as he recovers from back surgery. Is it a case of it simply him coming back to make them a force to be reckoned with, or is it a bit more nuanced than that?
Well, he would improve many teams if fit. We don't know if he is going to be fully recovered from the surgery. I suspect the issues run a bit more deeply in the amount of cricket that's being played and the amount of demands upon players require pretty deep resources and a stability of management. And I think unless those are in place, then it's quite difficult to maintain a consistent standard of cricket.
Well, Afghanistan are now in the UAE for a multi-format series against Ireland with a test match in Abu Dhabi, followed by 3 one-day internationals and 3 2020 internationals, with all the white ball matches taking place in Sharjah. The 2022 T20 World Cup champions Australia have laid down a marker for that upcoming tournament in the Caribbean and the USA in June with a 3-0 series win in New Zealand. And they won in different ways in the 3 matches too. In match 1, Tim David produced a stunning late blitz with 31 not out from 10 balls to help his side chase a daunting 216, winning off the last ball. And then in game 2, after scoring what appeared to be an under par 174, Australia then rolled New Zealand out for just 102, with Adam Zampa, who was hammered in the first match, bouncing back with 4 wickets. Then in game 3, a rain-affected match, the Australians comfortably defended a Duckworth-Lewis Stern-adjusted target in a match that was reduced to 10 overs a side. John, a lot was made in match 1 of Australia conceding more than 200 runs for the 4th 2020 international in a row after their 3 matches at home against the West Indies, but they still won, and they appear, you would have to say, to be in good shape for that World Cup.
Yes, they certainly are. I think Mitchell Marsh is relishing his role as leader. They're testing the squad, and they've got strength in depth. There are players they can afford to leave out. I think they're developing again to be a pretty formidable force.
Subhash, Steve Smith seems to be the puzzle. They selected him, picked him for matches 2 and 3 when David Warner was injured, and he opened. He scored 11 from 7 balls in the second game and 4 from 3 in game 3. Do they stick or twist with him when it comes to that World Cup, or look elsewhere for someone more dynamic, like a Jake Fraser-McGurk, for example?
Well, I'm an admirer of Smith, but right now he's making it tough for everyone staying with the T20 team. He's contributed a lot in Australian cricket, but his game is nowhere near to be fit for that T20 World Cup opener. I think Fraser-McGurk has shown what he can offer in very little opportunities he has got. Hayden Warner may be another set option up top. Josh Inglis has put his case forward too, and with Josh Brown now busy with franchise leagues after BBL heroics, you never know what Australia have in mind going outside the box.
Yes, that's an interesting call. Josh Brown, who was, of course, so outstanding for Brisbane Heat at the back end of the Big Bash League, he might be someone who's coming up on the rails there in terms of the selectors' thoughts. We remain to see what happens there. John, a word on Rachin Ravindra, of course. He produced an incredible display of hitting in match 1 with 68 from 35 balls. And he's gone from being Rachin Who to many people ahead of last year's Cricket World Cup. He's now become an all-format player and one of the first names on any team sheet. Now, we know you're a fan, but even you must be amazed at the speed of his rise over the past 6 months.
Yeah, he's been quiet for a little time over the last couple of months. It seemed that New Zealand were keeping him a bit under wraps, managing his progress. And now he's exploded again in T20, which was not considered to be his forte. Looks to be on a mission to me, and the sky looks to be the limit. I'm not surprised. I'm just pleased.
Yes, he's going to be on his way to the IPL as well, of course. Let's not forget that too. Subas, if you were a New Zealand supporter, would you be worried by these results, a 3-0 setback against Australia, or is it simply a case that all three matches could have gone the other way?
Batting wise, I think they have that firepower that's required for that game. Bowling wise, I think they can still do better. Lucky's pace with center spin has been strong, but I think Bolt seems to be struggling with more and more franchise cricket around the world and ahead of the World Cup. I think they need to have him at his best.
The two sides now switch format with 2 test matches for the Trans-Tasman Trophy, and we'll chat about match 1 of that series, which forms part of the ICC Test World Championship, in our next episode. The second edition of the Women's Premier League in India has begun with a bang as 5 teams, Mumbai Indians, the champions, UP Warriors, Delhi Capitals, Royal Challengers Bangalore and Gujarat Giants set out on the path to what will result in the title for one of those lineups. The opening match saw Mumbai beat Delhi off the last ball, with Sanjeevan Sajana hitting the only ball she faced for 6 when 5 were needed from the final delivery. Mumbai, the defending champions, then followed that up with a far more comfortable win against Gujarat to set the early pace, while Delhi bounced back from that initial setback to thrash the Warriors by 9 wickets with 5.5 overs to spare. Subas, the 2 finalists from season 1, Mumbai and Delhi, already seem to be flexing their muscles.
Well, the opener itself had everything, I think, to have a debutant pelting the winning 6 of last ball. I think it's stuff of dreams. The game could have gone anywhere, and as we rated Delhi and Mumbai as top teams, I think the results have shown the same. I think I expect them to continue the same result going forward as well.
John, we make no apologies for again mentioning Catherine Bryce, the Scotland all-rounder and a rare player from an associate country to be given an opportunity in this tournament, and she was outstanding for Gujarat in that loss against Mumbai, making 25 from 24 balls to lend the innings some respectability. And then she took 1 for 22, including a maiden. That's a terrific effort from her, isn't it?
It is, and it's a welcome justification for her selection.
Yes, it certainly is. And it's very pleasing to see her, A, being given the opportunity, and B, as you say there, John, getting the chance to show what she can do. What have your impressions of what's happened so far been?
Well, it looks like a tournament that's going from strength to strength, and I was particularly noted the performance of Sophie Molyneux. She's been out of the picture for a while. She came back, I think, to claim 3 for 20 odd in her spell. So that's good to see as well.
Yes, it's a pleasure to see Sophie Molyneux back in action. She's been out from the top level of the game for a long time with some serious injuries. She's been given the chance. She played, of course, in the test match against South Africa in Perth ahead of the Women's Cricket League too. Subas, 2 defeats from their opening 2 matches for the Warriors, one a narrow 2-run loss to RCB, and the second, that 9-wicket humbling by Delhi. On paper, they look as though this shouldn't be happening to them. They've got Alyssa Healy, Grace Harris, Talia McGrath, Sophie Eccleston, Deepti Sharma in their lineup. What's gone wrong for them in those first 2 matches, and can they turn things around?
Well, the first match, I think that was well within their control. The batters could start and couldn't convert it big, and at the end, they lacked set batter to finish the game. In the second match, I think they overpowered the Chase. Post start, yes, but a couple of wins will bring them back into contention, and I feel they have individuals just to do that.
Well, we'll stay across all the action in the Women's Premier League for you here at the Wicket. The Pakistan Super League has rolled out of Multan and Lahore, its first 2 stops during the tournament, with the next phase of matches taking place in Rawalpindi and Karachi. The storylines of the tournament so far have been the impressive form of the Multan Sultans, the winners in 2021 and the runners-up in the past 2 editions, as they've won 4 of their first 5 matches. But on the other side of the coin, the defending champions, the Lahore Calendars, the only side to retain the title, having also won the PSL in 2022, they've made a disastrous start to their campaign. They've lost their first 5 matches. John, first of all, let's talk about the Sultans. What's been the key or keys to their success so far, do you think?
I'm not sure you can pinpoint a single factor. In a way, they have a different coach. Abdul Rahman, who has been assistant to Andy Flower before, who's now in charge. They have Nathan Lehman as their chief analyst. Interestingly, they have a female fast bowling coach. They have a female general manager. I'm not sure whether either of those individuals, what they're contributing to success. I think Rizwan is in form. He's been dropped a couple of times. And we had Iftikhar Ahmed, of course, got 24 in the penultimate over against Lahore. Looks like the players are performing. Lots of good things happening for them. And so far, it looks to be a pretty well-organised camp.
Yes, good to see Mohammed Rizwan being successful. He really is a terrific all-format player, no question about that. But Subas, I'm not sure anyone predicted Lahore's form to fall off a cliff like this. What on earth has gone wrong there?
Well, the batters have done this job, but I think it's bowling unit that needs to step up. His situation has only made it harder for them. Skipper Sain has been performing, but he's not getting that support from compatriots in bowling. Zaman Khan especially, he has been a huge disappointment for the team. Someone who has played for the national team and is vying for a spot in the T20 World Cup. I think he should step up and get some performance out of him.
Yes, you mentioned Haris Rauf there. Lahore lost him with a dislocated shoulder suffered against the Karachi Kings in the side's fourth loss of the season. That caps a pretty rough period for him, with his central contract having been cancelled in the wake of his reported refusal to tour Australia with the Test squad late last year. He now faces a race against time to be fit for the T20 World Cup in June. Meanwhile, in Bangladesh, the BPL is coming towards a conclusion. The 7 sides that started out were whittled down to 4, with Rangpur Riders and Comilla Victorians occupying the top 2 places, while Fortune Borashal and Chattogram Challengers came 3rd and 4th respectively to face each other in the eliminator. The tournament has rolled along in parallel with the DP World ILT20, the Big Bash League, the SA20 and the PSL, and Chandika Hathras-Singh, the Bangladesh head coach, has had some very interesting comments about it in a recent interview. First of all, he said he felt that Bangladesh players weren't getting enough opportunities to shine and that they were often demoted in favour of overseas players. Subas, was and is that a fair call?
Well, that has been the case most of the times, but I think these teams pay heavy fees for the overseas players and are bound to make most of them. Even the Bangladeshi players have not fared well when they've got the chance, and reliance on overseas players is increasing. However, talents like Tawhid Ridoi, Sariful Islam, even Tanjid Hassan have impressed. So I think it's kind of mixed reaction.
And Jon Hathras-Singh has also called on the ICC to do something about players coming and going between leagues, something that causes confusion to fans and disruption to squads, as well as moving the goalposts during the tournament. It's something we've spoken of here on the podcast. But of course, the $64 million question is, what is that something that he wants the ICC to do?
Indeed, and one may ask, what can the ICC do even if they wanted to? I don't think they're in a position to force a salary cap. We know the market's heavily present in this franchise arrangement. It's not a very satisfactory situation. Can we expect the franchisers to collude in this? Probably not. I mean, they're not all Indian, but there are others involved in this. I don't see a very easy solution to this until such time as some external factor happens that forces them to reconsider.
Yes, it is a ticklish situation. There's no question about that. Well, by the time of our next episode, the BPL will have wrapped up and we'll review it all then. And we will, of course, stay across the action in the PSL here too at the Wicket. Finally, gentlemen, what has caught your attention in the past week in cricket? What have you seen and what has struck you? Subas, first of all?
Well, I was lucky enough to see the T20 fastest century record getting broken. Something I was in China when Kusal Malla broke it, and now Lofty Eaton has done it brilliantly. I think he was hitting all over the park, swiping at every ball that comes his way, and he made it. He himself didn't believe that he had made the fastest century, but we are in awe to see that innings.
Yes, Nick Lofty-Eaton in Nepal, 33 balls for 100 in a 2020 international. Absolutely remarkable stuff from him. And I said, what had struck you, Subas? There must have been every chance that a ball would have struck you the way Lofty-Eaton was hitting it, particularly in the second part of his innings there. John, what's tickled your fancy?
Well, the retirement of Neil Wagner from international cricket in a rather emotional press conference. He's not a man who strikes one as being particularly emotional. His calling card is to bowl short without any remorse. So I think it was a surprise to see that level of emotion. But it's also pretty representative of the way that New Zealand are quite cold and pretty forward thinking in the way in which they decide that they're going to move people on. He wasn't selected for the first test and decided that the writing was on the wall. So I think it's quite a sad thing to see, and especially for him.
Yes, 64 tests, 260 wickets at an average just over 27 per wicket. It's an outstanding career that he's enjoyed, Neil Wagner. There was a lot of speculation, of course, that he'd renew his rivalry with Steve Smith in the two-match series coming up in New Zealand. Well, that's not going to take place now, and perhaps Smith and a few other Australian batters are relieved men as a result of that, because Wagner always giving 100%, and his figures, well, they'll stand the test of time, no question about that. Well, thanks for joining us at The Wicket. That's the end of another episode. We'll be back soon with more cricket chat from the Gulf region, Asia and worldwide. Please don't forget to like, subscribe and comment on what you've heard wherever you get your podcast. We'd love to hear your feedback and let us know if there's anything you'd like us to feature in future episodes. For now, though, this is Brian Murgatroyd along with Jon Pike and Subas Humagain saying thanks so much for listening, and we look forward to your company next time.